Hey everyone. All right, well, we finally finished off the two main seasons of spring, the 2 months of spring. We still have one more month of spring, but it is supposed to get hot to the point where it reaches summertime, so let's hope so. I don't know. It's been kind of cold these past few days, if I'm being honest. Anyway, now it's time to talk about the movies I saw in March and April. Now, this is going to be very similar to the last one. I'm just going to look at each film that I went to go in theaters and saw during March, the month of March, and the month of April. It isn't entirely necessarily films that were released in March and April, just films I went to go see in theaters um, in March and April. And it will have to be new ones. I don't really go to many re-releases anyway. But also keep in mind, because I've gotten so used to these to doing reviews, and I guess I have more fun doing that with newer films I see. These will be long. There's not too many entries, but I will be spending a long time talking about them. I don't want to try too hard to do that. Maybe if it's better, I would try to keep it as short as possible. But seeing how these are newer films released, and I want to go to theaters to see them, henceforth I could pay attention to them better. I do seem to have a habit in finding a lot to say about them. So yeah, you probably will be hearing a lot about them. And also, yeah, bear in mind that means that yeah, I am going to be spoiling these films. So really, only go through entries to films you have seen or don't even want to see. Because whenever it comes to movies I talk about, I will bring up the spoilers. I don't know if I should eventually do spoiler free talks, but come on, man. If you want to hear my opinion on something, you gotta know to see it. Otherwise, just look at my reviews on IMDb and Letterboxd. Those will give you the idea of what I think of the movie without spoiling it. The whole point of this channel is to talk about the movies and why I like them, therefore spoiling them. This is a spoiler channel. Can you think about that? You want my honest opinion on the film without any spoilers? Then just look at my ratings. But if you're going on YouTube to see what I have to say about a film, I do feel like I'm okay to spoil it. I don't know, maybe just in this case. Maybe just for these newer films, yeah. So yeah, here is every movie I saw in theaters in March and April ranked.
Have a sequel to, if I'm gonna be honest, a movie I didn't really care for in the first place. That's right. I really wasn't a big fan of Ready or Not. I mean, the idea of a violent hide and seek game sounds awesome for a horror film. It's just what they came up with that I wasn't really a big fan of. I feel like the idea of having it be one woman versus an entire group of people after them, kind of just going for the reverse method of hide and seek, where in hide and seek, it's one person seeking, the rest are hiding. In this case, one person's hiding, the rest are seeking. I don't know. That kind of ruined the film for me. And also the comedy with these guys being kind of idiotic at parts. It kind of just ruined the horror aspect of the film. I don't know what it was. I just couldn't get into it or so much. But I was interested in seeing what the sequel had to offer because this movie does go all over the place. However, I will say I also didn't like this film. But that's not me saying it was worse. It wasn't worse than the first one because I didn't like the first one either. I'll be honest, I think this one is pretty much around the same. I kind of like it about as much as I like the first one. The film does have those similar elements. What we follow, like, she survived the events of the terrifying hide and seek game, ended up being the only one to survive while everyone else exploded in blood. She just walks out in blood. But then this group, this weird, bizarre group, sees that she survived it and bring her in to do another round of the game with involving them. They're supposed to be more violent and chaotic. They're gonna be better with this than the other guys were. It turns out they end up kind of just being the same. I mean, we got more actors. We got freaking Elijah Wood. Frodo Baggins is running this joint now, but that doesn't really do much because they kind of just still act in the same idiotic manner as the ones in the first one. And they also kind of add some more insanity by the end, revealing how much of a giant cult they are. And she wins the day mar- by agreeing to marry one of them, only to then reveal that now she controls them. And I guess some I guess something like they all just fall into a pit or whatever. It's a lot to take in. It gets pretty chaotic by the end. It's supposed to be like a movie that starts off simple but becomes more and more chaotic as it goes. And yeah, it definitely is like that. Still, just the overall gimmick and I think even the humor wasn't really to my liking. I just think this movie had ideas that could have been handled better. It could have made the horror aspect work a lot better. I feel like that would have helped with, I don't know, maybe just not having it be a comedy in that manner. I feel like I just couldn't get into the comedy since this really doesn't feel like the right kind of plot to work as a comedy. I know it's a chaotic mess, which usually is good for a horror comedy, but I really was kind of hoping for better stuff. So yeah, if you're into chaotic comedic horror, then these two movies would be great to watch. I just couldn't get into either of them. Ah, yes, the hype film of the year to most people, the Super Mario Galaxy movie. After an exciting adventure the first Mario movie was, well, okay, the first animated Mario movie from Illumination in 2023, specifically. That film certainly had a lot of hype surrounding it. Every Mario fan was hyping it up. We were all anticipating to see it. We knew it had controversy at first, but when it was finally ready to release, we were all looking forward to what it had to offer. So we went to go see it, and I found it to be pretty good. The animation was, of course, beautiful. The plot was all over the place, but still ran consistently, which I can respect. I did enjoy some of the characters and enjoy the references too. They were all over the place. But bottom line, the film it wasn't great, but it definitely told its story well enough, and I can respect it for going with a nice, decent plot, kind of adding new elements for a new film. But now we're on to the second one, which apparently is going directly into the Mario Galaxy logic. That's pretty quick. So yeah, really quickly, we're now in Super Mario Galaxy movie. So this movie, of course, focuses on our fellas going to different planet galaxies and seeing that there is a new threat in the form of a giant space station attacking, bringing Bowser, followed by Bowser Jr. And they also have Yoshi involved in this. There's a lot of characters and a lot of places in this movie. And that's my biggest problem with it. That's why it wasn't great. That's why this one ended up actually being really inferior to the first one. That's my biggest problem with this film. It throws in way too much. Yoshi and Bowser Jr. are not an example of that. They had a great amount of screen time. They definitely were brought to this movie well. I will say they both were introduced greatly. Like seeing Yoshi join alongside as a side character is like kind of making up a trio with him, Mario, and Luigi. That was pretty fun. And Bowser Jr. definitely made a great appearance in this film. You know, him and Cody, I mean Kamek, wanted to work together to build the station, and then he impresses Bowser with it. That was fun, but there's just way too much to try to throw in. Other than that, like just again, the whole idea of us going straight into the Mario Galaxy game. That game was awesome, no doubt. So I would normally be excited to see it adapt to the big screen with such an awesome game. But for the plot of the movie, this being the second Mario film, or at least second in this franchise, they really did add way too much. They of course bring us Rosalina. We all know her as the hot babe, I mean Guardian of the Cosmos, and her appearance in this movie ends up only being 10 minutes. Yeah, that's right. She barely gets any reasonable screen time in this film. She shows up for a bunch of scenes, but that's about it. She doesn't really add much to the film plot. She's supposed to be the one who watches over the sky. She's like literally the mascot of the Mario Galaxy portion. And yet her appearance in this movie is super brief because they have to make room for all these other characters and places they're introducing. They also bring us Wart, that boss from the second Mario game, a game that barely includes much reference to future games. Like Wart has not appeared in anything else other than that one game. So I guess you could say seeing him show up in a Mario movie is pretty cool. But at the same time, it really didn't need to be there because adds no real purpose and it's just too much. There's so many characters they're trying to throw in. There's all these worlds, and then of course they throw in freaking Fox from the Star Fox games. Apparently, most people love seeing that as this hyping us up to a Smash Bros. Movie. I really don't want to see that. I'm sorry, I do not think we need a Smash Bros. Movie being set up with this, okay? These should just be simple Mario films from Illumination. This does not need to be a Nintendo Cinematic Universe. That's just way too much, especially for the second film in the franchise. So yeah, that's kind of my biggest problem with this movie. Plus the comedy, it wasn't as great at times. With that said, however, what made me still enjoy the film It was visually pleasing, of course. The visuals were awesome, definitely much more beautiful this time around. And like I said, while most characters were kind of thrown in, Yoshi and Bowser Jr.'s appearance in this movie, they're the two new characters who really did shine greatly. They really should have just been the only two major new characters added to the film because their appearances were great. I definitely had fun with them. I had fun with all the other familiar characters in this films, and the plot, while all over the place, does still run smoothly at times. So I will say, the movie wasn't great, and it really did fall on the radar with how much stuff they try to throw in. But at the same time, I'll give it a pass because I was enjoyed for the most part. I wasn't hypnotized with all the stuff I recognized because I did recognize every single Mario aspect in this movie. So normally I would just be hypnotized by that and call it a masterpiece like most Mario fans. But I'm not doing it. I got to look at this movie in the right way. I'm not going to become affected by the Mario fan base of just being like 10 out of 10, so many references I got. It's just an okay movie for what it is. Oh, I cannot do it. I probably damage your eardrums. No one can. Here we have what is probably one of the most highly anticipated music biopics of all time. Frickin' Michael Jackson, the king of pop, which is pretty much an understatement. This man has made so much great music. Pretty much all of his songs I've heard are masterpieces. He's a legend in the pop industry, okay? But he's also had a lot of controversy in his later years. We all know what he's gone through in the 2000s. He's changed completely by appearance. He had all those weird allegations. And then, of course, there was his tragic death that I wasn't old enough to be saddened by. That happened in 2009. I was only like 3 or 4 years old, so I didn't get sad by it. I was just like, hey, mommy, what's that new Miley Cyrus, Lady Gaga, or Black Eyed Peas, whoever is popular and new at the time? So yeah, that was sad. But still, as I grew older, I became a huge fan of Michael Jackson, and now I pretty much have heard all of his popular songs. Everyone has. And of course, a biopic about him had to have been done justice, and they definitely threw in a lot of things to give it justice. First, the most obvious thing, having him be played by his own nephew, Jafar Jackson, who never even acted before in any other film. They just got him because he's related to Michael Jackson, and I guess they really want to give the king of pop as much respect as possible. So I can enjoy that. Now, as for the film itself, people do criticize it, mainly because it only focuses on his earlier years of life. The film only reflects on what he went through during his birth, the Jackson 5, and the 80s. We only focus on his career up to the 80s. We don't see anything after that. And that's usually where people will complain, oh, they're skipping out on the serious stuff. But as I watched the film, I came out really liking it. True, that would have been interesting, but at the same time, I actually am kind of glad it didn't do that. The stuff he went through during the 2000s, it is important to his career, but it's also a pretty heavy subject for a biopic that's supposed to also feature the early ages of Michael, because he went through a lot in his childhood, as his movie exclaims. We learn more about how he had a horrible father who wanted nothing from him but fame and money. He was pretty much kind of abused him from the Jackson 5 period. And when he reaches to become a solo artist, he became a massive success, had a lot of fans, despite his father kind of still being that way. They also do topic on the subject of when he got on fire during that incident where he had to go through surgery, and it kind of related to his facial change. So that part's brought up. A lot of his, of course, a bunch of his songs are played, and they are super loud. I will say this is probably one of the loudest theatrical experiences I've had with a movie because man, every song sequence in this film it was super loud. Man, I could barely hear my mom talking to me about this. Yeah, I saw this with my mom, and she's a huge fan as well. But yeah, this movie was super loud, so I barely had to worry about hearing her. I don't deal like that. But no, seriously, yeah, this was a loud movie, and I like that. I like how loud it got. I like movies that can, push the barrier for how big the volume can be. Not to the point where it will literally screech your eardrums. I just mean like in terms of bass booting or something. I don't know. Bass booting. Why did I say that? I mean like, with how loud it gets through the sound quality. Not through ear screeching stuff. Just, from the volume of the thing. So yeah, I like that in this movie. I do like it did get pretty serious. The emotions involving him and his father's abuse and all the other things he went through during the time really were fun to see. I guess my big issue with this film and why it didn't turn out better was because while they do topic on many things in his career, some things are kind of pushed too far. Well, not too far. I mean, like, some things aren't pushed far. No, that's what I meant. I mean, like, there are parts in this movie that are kind of rushed through. We don't really get to see enough of. Like, there's a scene where we learn about him being the first black artist to get his music videos on MTV. That's kind of just pushed through. We don't get to see enough of that. We have Miles Teller as his agent. I feel like he doesn't get enough attention in this movie as he should. And there's the part of him owning a monkey. They gave him a CGI monkey. I honestly hated that. I'm sorry. The monkey, they did not have to have the monkey do weird tricks. He was not there to do things that a monkey can't do. It just was a regular monkey that they couldn't get. They couldn't get a real monkey. They just had to make a CGI one. I honestly, I kind of hated that. He could argue that's a nitpick, but at the same time, it kind of took away from the realism this movie's supposed to have. I mean, this is Michael Jackson, not Planet of the Apes 5. All right, but those are my really only two big complaints: the lack of focus for some parts in the career and the CGI. But other than that, the movie is still pretty good. I had fun with it, and if you're a fan of Michael Jackson, you should too. I do think this movie was made to sort of appeal to those who want to remember Michael Jackson the right way. There's a lot he went through in the 2000s, and it's been talked about whether or not they want to continue this film with a sequel that'll focus on that. We'll have to see. I'm still not entirely sure where that's going, but as of now, I like this film for what it was. Okay, so normally I would not see this movie. Why would I see this movie? I'm usually one who's not a fan of rom com tropes. And with a film that's literally called The Drama, it sounds like something I do not feel pleased to watch. But what got me interested in seeing it was mainly because I am a big fan of Robert Pattinson. He is a pretty good actor, so, I do like to see more films of his. And also Zendaya's growing. I do see she's starting to show up in more movies, so believe me, I'm definitely trying to see more of her. Not like that. No, I think she's going to be a pretty great actress. And also the fact that she's dating Batman now, like she dumped Spider Man for Batman. How sad. Anyway, yeah, I got interested. I wanted to see it, and I came out finding it to be pretty well done. The film actually does go for a different route than I expected. I was, of course, expecting all our simple rom com tropes to show up in this movie, but instead, it goes for something completely different and pretty insane, if you can imagine. We follow these two who meet each other in a very awkward situation at a coffee shop, and from that point, they end up really pushing forward, becoming an awkward couple. But then they become less awkward and a more wholesomeness. Wholesome. They become more wholesome as a couple when they are finally ready to get married. They become engaged, and everything's all good. They seem to really get good with each other. They get along despite having an awkward introduction. The awkwardness turns into wholesomeness. And from their point, you think, okay, so what? Something's going to happen, which is going to put their marriage in a shamble or something. Well, here's what does happen. Apparently, at a dinner conversation where Pattinson brings his friends over to meet Zendaya, let's call them by the actors' names, we find out that Zendaya's character apparently suffered a childhood where she was originally going to do a school shooting. Yeah, she literally reveals that one point during it was either elementary or middle school, she was going to shoot up the school one point, but then eventually gave up on doing it after realizing she couldn't. But apparently, everyone gets scared now because they know that she once had intentions of doing something like that. And we also learned that she had a hearing problem because of shooting a gun and gun charging it. Like she once shot a gun as practice, and that's how she damaged one of her eardrums. So yeah, they learned that she's much crazier than they expected, and from there, Robert actually starts getting scared and concerned. Like he thinks about it more. He talks to more of his friends about what's going on. We even get to see some of it. We even get to see the past of how it went out and how Zendaya, was like during that time. Why she wanted to shoot a school up, why she didn't do it, and how it really pretty much put a damper in her character. But the movie does a pretty good job at running the plot forward. I mean, by the end, it ends with Pattinson revealing to everyone that she still likes Zendaya for who she is. He's okay with her and such. But then he ends up punching a guy at a wedding, and that kind of just results in them leaving. So from there, it just cuts to credits after the two of them meet again at a coffee shop and decide to just start over for fun. I will say, I do like how this movie went. It wasn't great. It definitely did suffer from that awkward moments or some of those slow moments, some of that stuff. It really isn't entirely up to my taste, but for a rom com, it had a fun new plot, and I was amazed with that. So that's why I give this movie more credit than I initially would want to. Yes, good old Pixar. You can't go wrong with them, or at least I can't. A lot of people want to, but you can't. It's Pixar. They know what decisions they want to make, and I'm pretty pleased with most of them. Hoppers is their newest film, and it certainly is a fun one. Here we follow the story of a environmentalist named Mabel. She's not the usual Mabel you expect from Disney. She isn't one who's crazy and likes to befriend people and a pig at a camp. No, this is a Mabel who is an environmentalist. She loves animals, and apparently, as she grows up, she starts becoming a protester towards the mayor, who wants to take one part of her childhood that was full of animals and trees and kind of tear it down. And she tries to prevent it from happening as much. She kind of wants to protect her land and protect her childhood. But then she discovers this technology where she can actually go inside a robotic beaver body and interact with the animals. She learns it from one of her college professors, and they don't want her to see it, but she saw it, she caught it, and she sneaks into it, uses the technology, gets into it, and becomes the beaver, where she then sneaks out, goes to the forest, sees all the beavers and bears and other creatures and animals, has fun interacting with them, kind of learns about what they do, and from there we seem to go from nice, fun, cute stuff to where the movie then decides to go for a darker, more insane turn by the second half. This movie definitely does a good job at getting insane as it goes forward. Gets dark and also quite over the top, like a good Pixar movie would. By the second half, she accidentally convinces everyone to kill the mayor, which she didn't intend exactly. She tried to tell everyone we should save our forest, and they're like, "All right, let's kill this mayor." And then now she tries to save the mayor or whatever, and all. But yeah, so by the second half of the film, it's just chaos. All the animals cause chaos, but now Mabel has to stop this nonsense, try to get everyone to bond with each other in a way. It's just a chaotic mess, but it's a fun chaotic mess because I will say this actually might be one of the funniest Pixar movies I've ever seen. It's below stuff like Toy Story, Monsters Inc., or Inside Out. Those films are funnier, but this one is really was hilarious. I definitely laughed in this movie much more than I thought I would, especially as one of the newer Pixar films. We know Pixar hasn't been as great nowadays as they were in the 2000s, but this film really was hilarious in my opinion. It comes from a guy, I think his name is Daniel Chong. He has worked for Pixar before as an animator, but he's also done his own work with other stuff. He's most notably known as the creator of the show on Cartoon Network. I think it was called We Bare Bears. I've seen some of that. I watched some of that show, but I do remember it being pretty fun. And there are parts of this movie that do kind of remind me of that show. So that should be fun. And yeah, the movie just has all that funny moments. But it also has a nice, interesting plot. Like I said, the plot goes crazy. And I like that. Because once it becomes crazy, the emotions and moral of the story becomes much more serious in the film. And that's kind of where we become much more invested to it. Some would say this kind of feels a lot like DreamWorks' Wild Robots, and I did sort of get that vibe a lot in this film, but they are two different types of stories. One focuses on what happens when robotic life interacts with animal life. This one focuses on what happens when an environmentalist wants to live the life of something he's always tried to defend or whatever. It kind of goes for a more mature, realistic approach. Okay, not entirely realistic, but we haven't seen robots interacting with animals quite like Wild Robot yet, so who knows? Hoppers kind of just tries to bring reality and modernism to the mix or whatever. Either way, it is a great film still, and I think a lot of everyone needs to see it. If you're one who hates how Pixar has been going, you definitely need to give this movie a shot. You'll either you're either gonna love it or just think it's fine, but still better than any film Pixar released in the past 2 years. It really does a great job and such. But of course, the top film of these past 2 months is probably what is going to be notably one of the best films of the whole year. Project Hail Mary has I've seen nothing but positive things about, and I can agree with that. The movie was pretty great. This film focuses on a science teacher, who is chosen to go into space and save their planet from being consumed by a dangerous form in the sun or something like that. I don't know, something involving the sun that he needs to stop. So he goes up into space, and he from there he pretty much it isolates himself on the ship, trying to work out how he's gonna save the world. And for what? It's just gonna be one of those stuck in space movies like The Martian, which comes from the same author who wrote the book that this movie's based off of. I of course never read the book, so I can't say why I love this movie because of what it adapts with. What I love this movie is because it's not just him stuck in space. It's him stuck in space with a mysterious rock creature that he has cute bondage with. This weird rock creature that he names Rocky, that was a super uncreative name. I will say that's my least favorite part of this movie, calling him Rocky. Like, bro, you couldn't come up with a better name than that. But still, they have wholesome interactions. They become best friends pretty much. And yeah, the whole movie literally shows their friendship and teaming up to plan out their ways of saving the planet. That could have just been used as overly comedic and overly cringe, but instead it's beautifully done. There's actually lots of beautiful emotions with it. Like they actually do bond really well in space. It's pretty cute, and we also cut back a few times to him back before he makes launch. They kind of like to while we see him in space doing this mission. At points, they transition to the past where he's about to take on the mission. We kind of see more about what he's like before he did this and if he was committed to it entirely or not. So we kind of learn more towards his character and how it leads up to him going into space versus how he is now that he's been in space and has made friends with this rock. I do like movies that take time to flash back. Flashback movies are really fun in my opinion. I do love those kind of films. I love seeing it a lot in this movie. Droopy totally has done a lot, so I will say it didn't make for the best plot run, but it still made for a really great one. And the visuals. Yes, the visuals in this movie are spectacular. That's to be expected. Just from the trailers, you can tell this movie was going to be visually awesome. But I'm really glad it wasn't just visual eye candy like some films are. It actually told a plot. It actually had stuff that kept us entertained. It had stuff that actually kept us watching the film with a smile on our face. And not just because Ryan Gosling's face is cute in this film. But no, the film had a beautiful setup to it. The plot was nice. The characters were all really likable. And the ending was great too. After they end up saving the planet, Gosling ends up meeting a whole bunch of other creatures similar to the one he meets, and actually befriends all of them. He comes to this area, this city, like this little area where a bunch of these rock creatures are living, and he kind of just pretty much interacts with them in that area. That was pretty cool. That's a pretty cool way to end the film. The film was awesome. Will there be a better movie this year? Too early to determine, but still, this was a pleasant surprise. I knew the film would be good, but it definitely was much better than I imagined. Because it wasn't good, it was pretty awesome. It was a really great film. Not one of the best in the entire decade, I will say, but still a great one. Probably is one of the best sci fi movies of this decade, so that's something.